How's boxing? Good. Carmen, anything? So, Homa, you live with your parents?
No,
What do you mean?
my parents live in Philadelphia.
So what are you doing here? You're here for her?
Closer. We're kind of life partners.
Like you guys are partners, or just like partners?
Just wanted to be around different families. Just be somewhere else. It was. I knew everything else.
Yeah,
Need something different.
yeah. People, the ones you're close to eventually force you to puke. I agree with you.
Yeah.
You hoping to get married?
Some point maybe.
That'll really make you puke.
Mm-hmm.
That's good to meet you. And what do you do?
I work at Zachary's. I'm a manager.
No.
My boss.
Oh, she's your boss. How long you been there?
We've been there the same amount of time.
Yeah. In 2005 or 6, I had a student, Paul something, he worked at Zachary's, gave a medium spinach mushroom to I think one of his friends for free.
Mm-hmm.
A minute later, he was fired.
No.
Yeah.
But what pizza?
They're very strict. They're like Mussolini. Martel, right? No? Yeah. Well, if there is anything you guys want to talk about, today's like a Friday, we can talk about anything. Pizza, chow mein. Ashley.
I think it's going to be an interesting question. I'm not going to be like, when are we going to get the grades from the papers? Although that would be nice. This thing about the pizza got me thinking. I've worked in the restaurant industry for like 20 years. And if I got fired every time I gave something away for free, I would have worked at about 50 different places by now. But it has me thinking about this idea of like the ethics of thievery and or shoplifting. I don't think it's wrong to shoplift from a place like Target. I don't do it because I'm too much of a chicken that I'm going to get caught. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think for a place like Target, you pick up something, you go through self-checkout, and then your hand goes up. I got this from the place that says $9.99, but the register says like $29.99. And you show them some skin, and the woman or the man comes in, taps in a couple of numbers, $9.99. Or you just go on with some little kids, just give them things, and just walk out. Stealing is really good. I mean, life is so boring. Once in a while, you just need to spice it up with something. Fighting, stealing. I mean, every time I go to Zachary's, I like pocket something. I'm glad, nobody that works there is here right now, but, so it's actually fun. I worked at a gas station, Shell gas station, Del Paso Heights, for about 3 years, graveyard shift. I took money, whatever I could, I would. And part of it really, I think it's just that Middle Eastern thing. And I always say, when I take things, America took our oil, took our land, It's payback time. So, even though Zachary's hasn't done anything to my country, yeah. So, more power to you. Actually, just go out there, give it a shot. I'll come visit you. Anyone else with anything less interesting? Yes, Lilac. That's Gening, by the way. She teaches at Dianza and Chabot. Philosophy, humanities, religious studies. She was once at Laney. Now she's prospered, so it's good to see you again. You want to talk about anything, Hama?
No, not yet.
What do you mean?
Nothing's coming. I'll think of something.
Okay, Anna.
I feel like you're not gonna want to answer this because I remember last year you didn't want to, but I don't know. I guess I was just thinking about like numerology.
Ugh.
But yeah, I remember like you talking about like the matrix and the 506 thing. So I don't know. Wondering if you wanted to talk about numerology at all.
No. I think everything has a shelf life because everything that you and I do in life is about relationships, whether it's with a pen or a pencil, numerology, an idea, or a human being, doesn't really matter. And I think once that life is expired, it's very difficult to find interest in it again. There was a time, all of us in this class, we have interest in various things, and for the most part, it's about self-discovery, numerology, astrology. And in as much as you may want to know a great deal about numerology, for example, and I suppose just hiding in books or relishing in the information the books are giving you, it's really like paradise because the world can't touch you. But there comes a point where mentally you get exhausted, psychologically get exhausted, emotionally get drained because too much information, you have to kind of decode, decipher, understand what's going on, and after a while you walk away. And the moment you walk away, and let's just say your physical life is not completely settled, the forces of life just keep attacking you. And you come to realize that numerology, astrology, they're, in as much as they're profoundly interesting, they're not going to be very helpful. You know, I think one of the, perhaps the most interesting psycho-spiritual, philosophical tradition is Buddhism. And not so much the people who came after the Buddha, but the Buddha himself, if he in fact existed. He didn't talk about God or your soul or heaven or hell, none of those things. He just said, listen, I'm just going to kind of deduce the human being, reduce him or her to simply a machine. And this is how this machine works. If you want to know why you fall in love, this is how it happens. If you want to know why you get attached, this is what happens. No astrology, no priest, no church, no Jesus Christ, none of those things. And one of the nice things I think about those particular traditions is that they are really hands-on for the most part. They won't allow you to tap into anything that eventually becomes useless in life. You know, I think these particular branches of sciences, you know, they're really, really fun. As long as you are somewhat detached from life. You know, Zachary is just fun. It's great. You get all these weirdos coming in. They're loud, obnoxious. It's a student in a university town, so lots of, you know, punks come in. And it can make things very interesting. And you can love your job, but there comes a point where you get to be like 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 and you look yourself in the mirror in the bathroom, Zachary's, which are horrible really, and you say, man, I've been here for about 20 years. And all of a sudden something really interesting happens to you. That Zachary's, in as much as it has been fun for about 20 years, it's no longer able to provide some of the answers or needs that you may now have at this particular stage in your life. I think the problem with your question and my being here is that You and I are meeting at the wrong time. If you had met me 20 years ago, if you were interested, say, in talking about dreams or numerology or astrology, I would like sit here and talk to you about those stuff for hours. But at this stage in my life, I can't even inspire any interest in myself to talk about those things. So my advice would be find someone out there, who's interested in these particular branches and just knock yourself out. Yeah, you can Facebook her. Yeah.
Is that just how you feel about belief in those two things, or is that how you feel about belief and faith in general? If we were to ask you the same thing about God, would you be like, I'm not interested in talking about him?
Mike Tyson was a great athlete for about maybe 5, 6, 7 years before his life, turned upside down. He no longer boxes, but he gives good commentary. And he gives good commentary about boxers, the new up and coming, punchers. And he's interesting to kind of sit back and listen to because he's gone through so many ups and downs in life. And I don't think he'll ever stop being interested in boxing. I just don't think he'll find the ring to be that interesting. He doesn't want to get knocked out anymore. That life for him is past. And I go back to, again, what I mentioned to Anna, which is, it doesn't matter what you want to put your finger on. You are, at a certain point in your life, you become interested in something. And what usually happens whenever you become interested in something, especially if that interest turns into, I really want to know, and then I really need to know. Once the need happens, now what you have is an emotional relationship. Up to the one period, it's just like a stupid, childish little fantasy that you have. I want a Tesla, I wanted this, and I wanted that. They really have no juice to kind of propel you, push you forward. So this idea about astrology, for example, I mean, look, I fell in love with the movie The Matrix. The first time I saw it, I was able to kind of just put everything together because I was teaching a class many decades prior to that, which was mysticism of the self at Sac State. And I was interested in numerology, astrology, all these different things. And so when the movie The Matrix came out, I was able, in my own head, to make some sense of the movie. And I used to show the movie to every single one of our classes. And I used to teach about maybe 30 classes a year. So that's 30 times for about 10, 20 years. There came a point where I was no longer interested. So the point, again, I'm trying to make is, once you're saturated, once the thing that once captured your interest no longer is able to capture your interest, something about you shuts down. It doesn't mean you won't talk about it. It doesn't mean that you won't entertain it. It's just not as interesting for you anymore. You're at a different place in life. I mean, look, you and I suppose, hopefully can speak like adults. There is a time where all you really want is just sex. And there is nothing wrong with it. Your organism instinctually says, I don't want meaning, I don't want marriage, I don't want children, I just want sex. There comes a point where you say, I just don't want sex anymore. I want sex with a good amount of passion. I'm not talking passion while you're having sex. A passion that you look at someone and there are emotions and feelings about you that are just oozing out. There comes a point where you say, I don't care about passion because passion comes and goes. I want something that's meaningful. And if you want to find meaning, it has to kind of be established on a solid ground. That you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days, you're going to have neutral, mediocre days. And because the meaning is somewhat solid, you're going to keep the relationship. There comes a point where you say, meaning is good, but I want this relationship to kind of morph into a marriage. The idea of just us being roommates is great, but it's not enough for me. And then there comes a point where usually the woman goes to the man and says, children. And so you kind of use the act of sex at different stages for different reasons. You're still interested, but now it serves a different function. We can talk about astrology for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, but I'm not going to spend 2 hours talking about something that I'm not interested in. And that's true for religion, that's true for philosophy, that's true for God, that's true for my job here. I ran into a colleague this morning around 6. I was out for a walk and he says, "Oh, Amir, how you doing?" "Oh, Bill, I haven't seen you for 30 years. And this is the person who was on my hiring committee when I first came to Laney. He says, "Are you going to retire soon?" And a couple of things happened. I came to realize, man, I really have been here for such a long time. Second, I must look really, really awful, old, that he's looking at me saying, "You look really bad. Laney has done its number on you, Maybe it's time for you to retire." And so it's kind of just another reinforcement. It's something I wake up with every day. I really don't want to go to school, and I don't want to really see anyone, and I don't want to talk about this stuff. And I think I am somewhat passionate, and it may only be a fantasy in my own head, my relationship with ideas and philosophy. But as the days go by, I come to realize I really just don't want to be in the classroom. And as, again, the days go by, that particular feeling gets more and more intense. In about maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I probably won't be here. I mean, I'm hoping that they'll just drop dead in the classroom while giving a talk about numerology. So all of life is about damage control. Once you lose interest in something, from that point on, you just don't want to lose it. What are you going to do if you all of a sudden looked at your companion and said, "I just don't think I want to be with this person anymore"? Well, you're not 20, you're not even 30, not even 40, you're almost 60. You look bad, smell bad, can't even walk. You go to Kaiser every other day. Who's going to want you? And you have no power in life, And that's awful, just awful. Yes, Homo.
That seems pessimistic.
Oh, yes. So you never look at the customers you have at Zachary's as they're eating this deep dish, spinach, mushroom, olives, artichoke, pesto. You say, in a couple of minutes, they're going to go to the bathroom and shit the whole thing out. You never say that? Of course you do. And no one could blame you for being a pessimist. You're just being very real. There is a moment, the first slice is really, really delicious. The second slice, not as delicious. The third slice, you're just greedy and lustful. You don't, And then the third slice, you're going to walk away with a stomachache and then diarrhea.
But what about the pleasure you experienced the first? Isn't that what it's all about?
My grandmother, she's probably in hell, but she died some years ago. I would go back home once in a while to visit her. Sometimes I would go back with, my beard, which was a bit more black. And she would always look at me and say, "Amir, youth stays with you for one day. Old age, a lifetime." Pleasure is a very youthful stage in any experience. And one of the nice things about pleasure is that past goes away and all the traumas you've experienced, future goes away and all the anxiousness that it creates. And you're just captured in the moment. I mean, you become like Eckhart Toilet. I know some of you in this class know who this guy is. The idiot. So, and that's what happens. You live in the moment. The pleasure consumes you, and there you are. And all you do is talk about how delicious the pizza is. The problem with pleasure, especially the sort of pleasures that don't really have much of a life shelf, is that once they go away, you go back to the past, you go back to the future, and the pleasure that propelled you and focused you on the present, that just vanishes. You're not going to do anything in life that's not going to give you pleasure. It's impossible. I mean, the very fact that you're here, you're not here for me. You're here because something about your cousin, you know, you wanted to make her happy. In making her happy, you were happy, and both of you are married in happiness, you know. And this could have either been a negative experience for you, or it could be positive. Whatever she said, it could have even encouraged more, or you could have come to class, realize I'm a complete bore, I'm a complete ass, maybe I am both, and you say, you know, Ariana, you deceived me. This guy sucks. Don't ever invite me to any of the classes you're taking at Laney or anywhere else. You know, so I'm guessing from your body language that to some extent, even if what I'm saying is kind of touching you in a negative way, you are very much in the present. But in about 10 minutes, you're going to go away. The pleasure is going to go away, and the troubles of life are going to capture you. And it doesn't mean those troubles are not going to give you pleasure. They may, you know, but that's what we do in life. You're not going to pursue anything that does not give you pleasure. It's impossible. One of my closest friends a few days ago tried to commit suicide. She is now being held somewhere, and we go visit her, you know, once or twice a day. So what you have is, you know, when something devastating happens in your life, when you were younger and you don't really have good people in your life to kind of help you put the pieces together in a healthy way, it stays with you. And as you begin to kind of feed and nourish this traumatic seed day in and day out, you know, and as your action further encourage the seed to blossom, it has such a huge space inside you. You know, you only have like 10% of your mental and emotional space to yourself. 90% or 80% has to do with the experience you suffered like 20 years ago. And this person has tried many, many times to overcome it. And this is not her first attempt. Now, from this point on, you may look at it and say, well, isn't suicide a very pessimistic way of looking at things? Well, the answer is yes. But for someone who's tried to overcome certain memories and has been unable to, and she can't hold on to any job, she can't hold on to any relationship, and she's no longer 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60, she's getting up there and her body's going to kind of fall apart. And one of the problems with having trauma is that you're not going to allow too many people come very close to you. You know, people, I mean, the door is always like just it's just cracked. And through that crack, you can see the person's eyes, and just that way you create a relationship. You will never be as hospitable. If you're wondering why I am the way I am, just coming to class and just saying, let's just wing it, is because if you want to go to a Middle Easterner's house, you don't phone them. You don't like email them or text them, can I come over? You just kind of just barge in, you know, and even if you don't have anything, whatever you have, you just put on the table, let's eat together. That's what we do. Okay? And so in the Middle East, even if you've suffered a great amount of traumatic experiences, you have no choice but to be hospitable, because that's imposed by the culture itself. And nobody really cares for you whining. Nobody cares. Okay. Here, the story is different. So this time around, this person took a lot of pills with a lot of alcohol, hoping that she could end it. And why would you want to end life? Because in life, you suffer. In death, there is no more suffering. It's something that the Stoics had taught us some years ago. It's a branch that came out of, you know, anyways, after the death of Socrates, 3 branches of philosophy, main branches, kind of sprang out. One of the things that the Stoics had argued is that, you know, maybe there is no soul, and maybe there is no afterlife, and maybe there is no God. And death is just a state of no feeling. And no feeling means the 5 senses, your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and this stuff, they're never going to be manipulated by what you see, You're not going to covet anything. You're not going to lust after anything. You're not going to indulge in anything because you're dead. And all the memories that come to you through experiences that you store up here, and some are positive, many are negative, they too will be gone. So in death, that's the ultimate pleasure, even though you may not feel it. But at least you won't feel the traumatic experience of, being alive. So, have you never been constipated?
Mm-hmm.
You work at Zachary's, of course. Right? I'm sorry? Whatever. But you've been constipated.
Yes.
And when someone asks you how you're doing, what do you say? Oh, don't make me laugh. Right? And then what happens when you're actually in the bathroom? Pleasure. How could anyone have so much pleasure while pooping? Well, if you're constipated, it's like being in heaven. The toilet bowl is like the Garden of Eden. And you know who's receiving your poop? Not God, the toilet bowl. So, yes, Caitlin.
Like an afterlife or something? Or is it just
There is a guy by the name of Omar Khayyam. He's a Persian poet, astronomer, theologian, philosopher. He has this really, really beautiful line that you read all these books, and I suppose he was talking to me, about various religious traditions, about God, about truth, about justice, about afterlife, about your soul, whether you're going to end up in paradise or hell or purgatory. And he ends it by saying, I have never seen anyone come back from afterlife to tell me whether or not there's a God, or a soul, or a punishment. So it says, live your life right now, the best you can. There was a stage in my life where I was very interested in this stuff, and I did all sorts of different exercises. Afterlife is very much like numerology. I don't know. I think you should follow the dictum of either Henry David Thoreau or Ralph Waldo Emerson. You're young, and this is America, the land of the privileged, at least for now. You should be able, try at least, to suck the marrow out of life. But you have to find the marrow first. Have you ever had a needle be put in your spinal cord to get some of the marrow out? Oh man, it is so painful. The needle is like this long. So before you can actually suck the marrow out, you have to figure out where the marrow is, and that's tough. But if there is an afterlife, I wish you well. Because from the way you look, you're not going to end up in a good place. I'm just kidding, I don't know. Anyone else? Marco. Genning, it's good to see you.
My question is regarding the parable of the sower.
Yes.
So, you think the type of ground it is, like rocky, a path, or covered in, are those grounds permanent, or can they be changed by an outside force?
Well, you could never change them. First, you're talking about the Middle East. I mean, Jesus really is a Palestinian. He was born in Gaza. You guys get that? What? Say again?
What are you going to do there?
Who? He? Where? I was just trying to be funny in an unfunny way. So you're talking about the Middle East not getting too much rain. It's not as bad as certain parts of Africa. So the ground is really, really hard. Okay. And so you need someone with an axe or a shovel or a hammer or something to kind of break the ground. So I don't know if you've done any farming, if you've done any gardening, and if you've ever been to Roseville, that's where I used to live. And my brother, I remember, he had just bought a house in Rockland, close to Rockland. The ground was filled with rocks, and you had to really get a jackhammer. So we went to Home Depot, stole a jackhammer, and we dug like 20, 30, 40 holes. So this is how you make change. You're a young man, and your mind is no longer fresh. You have in your head all these ideas about yourself, about life, about religion, about God, right? I mean, that's a hard ground. Are you interested in this class? Mildly. Now, what is interesting is some people could be very interested, some people could not be interested, some people are just mildly interested. The only reason why you're mildly interested, first, because maybe our temperaments don't mesh, maybe the way you digest information, maybe this is just the wrong class for you because this is now you receive information. Maybe this is the way you receive information, but it's just the wrong kind of information given to you by the wrong man, right? But let's just say instead of mildly, would be very interested. Well, just because you're interested doesn't mean anything. The ground has no problem growing weeds out of it. The farmer wants to plant seeds that you can have like some useful vegetables. I don't know if you ever planted like a rose bush. In a few weeks, you have all these weeds just trying to suffocate the bush. So what do? You just pull them out, you destroy them. In your head, there is all these components that give life to who you are, what you are. These are the weeds. Someone from the outside needs to pull them, but you're not going to let them. So what you have in the parable of the sower is you have this guy named Jesus. He's got seeds of wisdom. Or if you were here on Tuesday, we talked about, relationships. And how Ashley, for example, wants to educate Carmen, the sort of men she should go out with, what she should be interested in. Not so much one's body, not so much the way they speak, not so much the way they make you feel, right? Just look at the core, the substance that lives inside this person's life. Now, that's a good amount of wisdom that she has gained, not from books, from her own life experiences. And that's something that you don't find very often. People have a lot of book knowledge, but what they lack is practical experience. There is this kid right now on YouTube. He's gained a good amount of following. I don't know, his name is Alex something. He's like not even 30. But he goes around, trying to convince people that there is no God, there is no hell. Jesus was, just a figment of one's imagination, all this stuff. And there is nothing wrong with that, by the way. But this is a man who's never gotten cancer. He doesn't know really what pain is. This is a man who was born in the 21st century, not the 20th century. This is a man who doesn't really perhaps study capitalism and what has happened to the religion, for example, the past 600 or 700 years. His only task is to convince people that religion is just like a virus, a disease. But the truth is, if you examine anything under the sun with intense rationality and reason, nothing stands a chance. Nothing. It doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter how much you love. I mean, one thing that, at least when you read the dialogues of Plato, is that Socrates always wants to know whether or not you know what you're talking about. You say you're a Christian. Well, what the hell does that mean? So you're going to give me a quote. What the hell does that mean? And in the end, you realize, well, the power of reason is just far too much, far too powerful for you to just wrestle with reason through faith. It's not going to work out. And eventually you and I will get into a fight. You'll go your way and I'll go mine. Okay. So what you have is this man named Jesus. What does he have? Well, for someone who happens to be that focused in life, his purpose is really quite simple. He wants to be a boxer, which means that he's going to spend like 10, 15 hours of the day just thinking about boxing and being in a ring and reading books about that and watching videos about that. So Jesus is a guy who just focused on wisdom, whatever that may be, and how we can give it. Okay. And now what you have in Jesus is a very, very novice, very young teacher. Okay. He says, you know what? Whenever I see a human being, I'm just going to give it to him. Okay. I had a student maybe 3 decades ago. She would always say, Amir, I have so much love to give. She had a lot of love. But she always gave that love to the wrong people. Every 10 days, she would sit somewhere, cry because someone broke her heart. Okay. So, because he's a novice teacher, he assumes that if he was to plant some seeds in a piece of wood, a 2x4, you'll have corn coming out. Doesn't happen. He said, well, maybe a 2x4 is not the best of places. Maybe I should do it on concrete, but that doesn't happen either. Maybe I should do it on good grounds. Right? There is potential, but what you're dealing with inside every life is a volcano of stuff happening. You have your past to deal with. You have the anxiety of future to deal with. You're taking 12 units. You have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. You have all these fantasies in your head. And every time you say, I want to focus on the seed, your religion comes up. Your parents come up. Your girlfriend or boyfriend come up. Your own stupid fantasies come up. There is no way the seed is going to prosper. So even though you may enjoy the seed and even though your ground may be really, really, really good, the way you think about yourself and your life and the way your life is just set up, it's not going to allow it. If you want to be good at anything, monogamy. And then he happens to be very lucky, and he just plants some seeds, some good ground, and there are no vultures. And one of the best ways you can get rid of vultures is what is perhaps the most intense emotion that can be inspired in us. It's not the intellect. The emotional center is the most important, and that's love. Once you fall in love with someone, other people go away. Other desires go away. The rest is just BS. Yeah. And the difficulty again of that is that if you look at history, you realize the best of teachers were never really able to find good students. Who's that? Socrates, one guy, Plato. 6 years of walking around. Moses ultimately looks at these people and says, fuck them. Aaron, you take over, I'm leaving. Jesus in the garden. I can't do this anymore. These people suck. And when you read the Gospel of Judas, these people really, really suck. Muhammad, language and conversation has failed me. I'm just going to grab my sword and just go out there and just chop people's head off. The Buddha, my teachings are only reserved for those who have a golden soul. Not the iron, not the bronze, not the silver, only the golden. It's only a hippie like Jesus, who's able to kind of bring together 12 very, very crummy and novice disciples who in the end really just fail him. So teaching anything to anyone is tough. And it doesn't matter what it is. Go teach cooking to someone who's not interested. Make him interested in cooking. You won't be able to. Yes, Carmen.
It's just a quick one, I promise.
A quickie. I like that.
Yeah, just a quick.
Go
I was
ahead.
just wondering, where's a good place to start reading Henry David Thoreau? You mentioned him, and have like, I think I have a book by him, but I don't remember which one.
Any book is good. Which one is that? Well, that's a bad book. The one you have is bad.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. No, any book of his is good. You know. I think you should read, and this is just my own take, you should read the autobiography of Malcolm X. And the reason I say that, not because he's a social activist, not because you should be interested in the African American history, it's because it's, if you don't want to read that book, there's another book called Daughter of Fire, which I don't think you're for that, but regardless. So what you have in the Malcolm X's story is a young kid who sees his parents, his father, just get killed right in front of his eyes. If that was to happen right now, you'd probably be in therapy for the next couple centuries. Okay. For some strange reason, he saw, he felt, but he was able to kind of just go on with life. Okay. Then you have him witness his mom slowly turning her direction towards drugs. It's just too much, So you watch your father die, you watch your mother's health eventually kind of become consumed or taken away by the world of drugs. And then you see your siblings being taken away, and each like at a different foster care. And then you have the little Malcolm. Okay. So that is usually what happens to all of us. And you don't have to kind of look at this literally, but metaphorically. There comes a point you're not going to be as interested in your father, or as interested in your mother, or as interested in your siblings. Everybody has their own lives to live. Okay. But what all of us have in common is you want to be liked. You want to be liked by other people. And that's what Malcolm wanted. He wanted conformity. He wanted meaning. He wanted belonging. He wanted to belong to a cult. So when they called him Orange Poodle, he liked it. Because for the first time, people actually liked him. And he enjoyed dyeing his hair. And what can you do in life as a person of color or as a human being? Well, you steal. And stealing doesn't mean that you go to Target and steal something. You can steal ideas. Like me, I went to school. None of these ideas are my own. I stole them. And I played with them day after day after day. And I give myself the illusion that these are my ideas when in fact they're not. Okay? And eventually I get caught. Some people get caught by ending up in prison. Some people get caught by getting depressed. Some people get caught by realizing, well, there is no more, they're no longer interested in, being married to this person. Everybody eventually gets caught. And when you get caught, it's a really sad place to be, because not only physically are you unable to go wherever you want, but intellectually and emotionally you're just constricted as well. That's the life story of Malcolm X. And then all of a sudden, someone looks at him and says, wow, you're interesting. There is something about you that's really, really interesting, and I don't know what it is. There are all these other people in the prison system, but this guy only focuses attention on Malcolm. Why? How? Who the hell knows? And that's the magical part of these kinds of relationships, that at least I don't know how they happen. Now, what happens to Malcolm is he resists. I don't want to do that. I want to continue like dyeing my hair blonde or yellow or orange, And eventually someone looks at him and says, why are you afraid to become who you've always been? Now, it's not like this is the first time he's heard this throughout his life, but at a certain point, he has this particular opening in his psyche or his soul, whatever you want to call it, that this statement just goes inside him. And he becomes interested. But the interest is not enough. this guy keeps pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, where ultimately Malcolm says, you know what, my past is irrelevant. I don't like my past. I don't even like the sort of future that my past was to create. I don't know what this guy is talking about, but it's interesting. I don't know what the Quran is saying, but it's interesting. And then through word of mouth advertisement, Elijah Muhammad comes to the forefront. No different than Morpheus in the movie The Matrix. And all of a sudden you realize, well, you can't sleep, you can't eat. All you do is think about Elijah Muhammad, and you would want to do whatever you possibly can to make sure that he's happy with you. And then he falls in love with Elijah Muhammad, which is really, really scary. At the same time, joyous, because for the first time, he's found a community. Okay. And then he conforms to the structure of that community, the Black Muslim Brotherhood. But there is something about Malcolm which is very different than the rest of us. All of us enjoy power. All of us enjoy communities. I like to go to church and sit amongst like 1,500 people. It's nice. But they're all Christians. I'm a Christian. And Malcolm says, no, I'm not here for that. I just really want to understand some basic things about life. So he walks away. And so that's again, a good book if you want. But any book is good. Daughter of Fire is good. But not really. Lilac. Caden.
Does pleasure exist without pain? And why isn't pain a lesser form of pleasure, or pleasure a lesser form of pain?
So if I was to tackle your question within the context of the movie The Matrix, I would say the following. Unfortunately, we don't know much about Thomas Anderson's childhood. Some years ago, I was having lots of pleasure in the bedroom. And then all of a sudden, this person looks at me and says, I'll be right back. Where are you going? I'll be right back. Where are you going? I have to use the bathroom. Is it number 1, number 2, number 3? What is it? How long are you going to be? It's going to be number 3. But what the hell is that? It's like a little bit of number 2, a little bit of number 1. So this person leaves, comes back like after 2 hours. She was constipated. And when she comes back, she says, okay, let's continue. Continue? Are you kidding? You're disgusting. So, Carmen, you okay? So, forget the Matrix because so let's talk about the anatomy of pleasure, how pleasure comes about. Initially, they're very instinctual. You're not yet a political animal where you say, okay, where do I need to go to have fun, to escape boredom, to escape anxiety, frustration, irritation, confusion, depression. None of those things exist initially. And your forms of pleasure are really quite simple and basic. And they just ooze out of you without much reflection on your part. As you become a little older, you walk into society and you realize that your buddy over there has a bike that you don't have, and your other buddy is eating ice cream that you're not eating or licking or whatever. Or someone has a girlfriend that you don't, and someone has a car that you don't. So your emotions become a bit more complicated. Your reflective components become much more complex. And so what happens is the following. You have 5 windows through which you experience the world. You have your eyes, you have your nose, you have your tongue, you have your ears, and you have your touch. Okay? Now, in the first 5, 10, 15, 20 years, especially the formative years, the first, say, 0 to about 6 or 7, your frontal lobe is not yet fully developed. So your garage where you store all your life experiences, your memories, they're all over the place. If you have kids, anyone in this class will tell you that when your kid is when you have a child, experiment, on him or her. When they're I don't know, a year old, slap him really hard. And they'll probably sit somewhere cry. And then once the crying is over, say, let's go to Safeway and steal a box of ice cream. Say, yeah, let's do it. And you kind of sit back as an adult and you're puzzled. I just slapped this kid. Or I was just mean to him. How could all of a sudden all of that be forgotten? And he holds my hand, hugs me, kisses me, and says, Dad, I love you. Let's go get ice cream. That doesn't make any sense. Okay? That's only because our brain has not yet fully developed. Now, once, as you're growing and your brain is also growing, you're able to store certain experiences. And then society, culture will tell you what things will give you pleasure, what things are damned, you shouldn't, even though they give you pleasure. So a good amount of what you categorize as pain, pleasure, joy, happy principles, they really have to do with the environment in which you're born. Okay. Now, your 5 portals, your senses. Now, I may be very attractive to your eyes. You look at my beard and you say, man, I look myself in the mirror. My beard just sucks. Look at his beard. Okay? Now, you come to this class, you look at me, and you envy the way I look. But then I open my mouth, and my voice is like squeaky. Caden, how you doing? He says, man, this guy looks good, but he sounds really, really bad. And what you have is now conflict. Your eyes say delicious. Your ears say ugly. Okay. Or you're walking past by a restaurant and the food looks really, really good. And you put the food in your mouth and you say, yuck. Even though it looks good, it tastes bad. Okay? So we are very, very, very complicated organisms. Okay? And one of the things that this magical emotion called love does for us is it brings all these windows through which you experience the world together. And the only definition that they'll give you is pleasure. You will love your teacher. And even when you fear him, pleasure. Even when he creates anxiety, pleasure. Okay. Now, all those things aside, the moment you open your eyes and walk into the world, the only thing life is offering you are experiences. That's all. Okay. What we do with experiences, we have a tendency of categorizing them. One goes into the category of pleasure, i.e. positive, the other negative, i.e. pain. And there is one in the middle, neutral. It's neither fun nor is it painful. Okay. Now again, we are reactive organisms. Anything that gives you positive or pleasure, you want more of it. Gluttony. You lust after it and you become greedy. You want to store more of it. Okay. Anything that gives you pain, you will avoid. In case of people with trauma, trauma is very, very painful. Not seeing it brings about joy until it refuses to go into hiding. Now you have pain all the time and you want to figure things out. Looking for a therapist, joyous event. Listening to what he has to say, awful, until you grow a thicker skin. Opening the memory files and having all these events come up, and seeing all these emotions about you and thoughts about you, painful. But what gives you joy is, I am on my way to recovery. But it takes a long time for you to be able to kind of look at and experience pain as stepping stones towards joy or pleasure or perfection. It takes a long, long time. I used to play tennis about anywhere from 6 to 10 hours on the court every single day for about 10 years. Initially, what you get is blisters, and they are painful. But if you keep at it, the blisters will become solid rock. I still have them, even though I haven't played for maybe 20 years. They just won't go away. And once in a while, I go to the garage and I get like this sharp needles and I poke them where the calluses are. I don't feel anything. Oma,
You don't have anything.
really?
Well, mine ties to, I'm also interested in the same question, but I have, through like an Enneagram lens, there's certain numbers that doesn't take a long time. They do just like they see the beauty. I guess they value the beauty. It's not really about pleasure. There's beauty in things that are ugly or things that are painful. And do you think that's, that can be learned from by other people?
Have you talked about the Enneagram in this class? So there was a guy, I'm sorry, Enneagram, it just basically means 9 points in a circle. So the assumption is that people fall into 9 different personality types, okay? And they are subgroups of 3. So you have 8, 9, and 1. Then you have 2, 3, and 4, and then you have 5, 6, and 7. And every 3 subtypes, they have certain things in common. And they can either move towards something that's negative, that's bad for them, or move towards something that'll help them grow. There are certain types that enjoy sadness and pain very, 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 very much. There is something that happens to them in sadness, in events that kind of creates a good amount of pain because it brings about, these are the emotional types. 7, 8, 9s, I'm sorry, 8, 9, and 1, they're not really emotional. What they want is they want to be in control of every goddamn thing that's out there. Now, the 2, 3s, and 4s, they say, you know what? I don't really care for reason and rationality. I want to feel. Jesus is a feeler. You know, so he looks at Judas and says, Judas, you know, don't think, feel. Moses, on the other hand, he looks at society and says, it's a complete mess. I don't care how you feel about anything. You got to think. No stealing, even though you may feel like it. No cheating, even though you may feel like it. No leaving your parents, even though you may feel like it. Okay? So he pushes you into like thinking about things really like reflectively. So what you said, I want to change it a little bit. May I? There was a... Ashley? What time is it?
5 after.
You have a nice watch.
Thank you.
Blue looks good on you.
Thank you.
So,
Is it blue? The
well,
color I'm wearing looks good on you.
there are 3 cones in the human brain. They look like cones, I suppose. And they help us see colors. If you were to remove those cones, you wouldn't see colors. That's one way to remove racism. Just get inside people's head. But all that aside. So, there was a young woman long time ago, and if I'm not mistaken, her name was Ariana. And one day, Ashley, stop it. One day, as she's reading a book, she says, I like what I'm reading. It's all about tattoos. Ooh, I want to get a tattoo. So she goes to Ashley's tattoo. Now, you've never really had a needle anywhere in your body, but the kind of picture given to you in this book, so beautiful, you know. And what you want is like this lion on your bicep. Because the king of a jungle, as you want to be the king of your life, you know, like Leonardo DiCaprio in Titanic. And so you go to Ashley's shop and you say, I'm here for a tattoo. And of course she says, the artist says, well, what kind of a tattoo do you want? I want a lion. Well, do you want it on where exactly? Your forehead, your cheeks, your arm? I want it on my right arm. Why the right, not the left? Because right is about justice, it's about authenticity, creativity. Oh, okay. And why a lion? Why not a frog? I had a student some years ago, funny little girl. She had 2 carrots, one tattoo here, one tattoo here. Of all the things you could have tattooed on your body, 2 carrots, they were ugly looking carrots too. Says, yeah, because, you know, I was watching like National Geographic and they had these like tools or microphones or something, sensors on the carrots to see whether or not carrots feel pain as they're being pulled out. And lo and behold, carrots in fact do feel pain. So I was so moved by that episode that I went to the tattoo shop and I had 2 carrots tattooed on me. Now, you're very much the same. You read a book and it's exciting. You hear a talk and it's exciting. So you want a lion. You're a seeker after truth. And Ashley says, okay, well, here's the chair. Sit comfortably. Won't you like sip on this tea or coffee a little bit? I'll be right back. And she brings her equipment. She says, you ready? I'm ready. See, while you're reading books and while you have fantasies in your head, you assume yourself to be ready for everything and anything. And then Ashley turns on the compressor. And this ink slowly the air is pushing the ink through the needle. And the needle now goes inside your arm. And you say, oh, no, please, no. What happened? It's too painful. What part of the lion are you tattooing? The head. No, the head is too painful. Can you start with a different part? Okay. So again, the needle goes into your arm. Again, you scream. What part? Well, it's the leg. Forget the leg. Different part. And after many tries, poor Ashley, with a nice watch and a sky blue sweater, throws down her equipment, the needle and this and that, and walks away in disgust. And simply says, you like the idea of a tattoo, but not the tattoo itself. And I suppose the moral of the story is we are all consumed by hopes and dreams and fantasies. No different than going to a tattoo shop. But the moment things fall on ground and it's hands-on, you realize confusion comes about, anxiety comes about. So, pain, pleasure. Just to give you different personality types, my teacher was number 8, Hussein. He was like a bulldozer, you know. I was a different type. So every time we would turn off the lights and, you know, I would sing, he would say, Amir, not so much feelings, please. I don't feel like it. What's wrong with you? Why do you have to like make everybody like feel this way or that way? Can you like sing the normal way? I'm saying, what is that? He says, I'll show you. And he would sing, and he had like a big voice, and it was a big belly and a big mustache, you know. So, anyways, Carmen. Okay. William, anything? No? Okay. Yeah. Um, it can be Isaac. And it can be Newton. What is it? Ervin. Sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry? So imagine that you have been out of school for about 5 years. You're now like, I don't know, 22, 23, 24, and you want to go back to it. And you're the zealous kind, you know? So instead of like giving it a shot, just see how you do with like one class, you take like 10 classes. And you're very inspired because for the first time you realize you want to put your life back together and you want to make something of yourself. And the first few weeks you keep up with all of your classes. And then your body crashes as it should, you know. It's not, first of all, used to that much pressure. Second, you're carrying too much and you weren't really aware of the heaviness of the load that you need to carry. And then you cannot sleep for a day or two. You miss a couple of classes because you're tired now, you're sick now, your body reacts negatively to all the pressure. And then you go to your class. Like you have 5 classes on a Monday and then 10 on Tuesday. And then you look at the workload. You say, oh, man, this is too much. And then you go home and you want to like, you know, do your assignments. You say, should I do philosophy first, calculus, or geography, or history, or psychology? Which one should I do first? And you open one book, you realize, man, this is too difficult. You do different classes, that's too difficult. And something about it just shuts down. You say, screw all this. I'm just going to take a nap because I'm really exhausted. And we have a tendency of justifying all sorts of BS about ourselves, right? And you wake up and you're in a foul mood because you feel kind of somewhat inaccomplished. And so you give it a couple days, it's going nowhere, and you say, you know what? I'm just going to drop all my classes. I'm just going to focus on work, save some money, buy myself a car, and do A, B, C, D. And so you drop out. Sometimes when there are just too many things that you have to carry, there's a good chance that you won't be able to do any of it. So apathy is really just a very organic reaction to an environment that is throwing 1,001 things your way. And initially you try to wrestle, to combat, to fight back, whatever you want to call it, but at the end you realize it's just too much. The divorce rate is about 60%. So if there were 100 people in this classroom, 60 of them, despite all the fantasies, they will fall apart. And if you really, really study those numbers and focus on them, there's a good chance that the moment someone comes to you and says, marry me, the information is going to come up and say, I really love you, but I don't think I want to. Just find yourself completely paralyzed. It's normal. A quickie, Lilac?
Quite unrelated.
Sure.
You mentioned in passing that had surgery.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's I don't know if that's but if you're healthy.
Like, am I going to die soon? Well, if I dropped it, that'd be good. If I have to suffer, that'd be bad. And we'll talk about death at some point in the class. I don't know. Triple bypass?
Um, not quite a decade ago.
For what reason? I know you guys are not interested, but who cares? Go ahead.
Um, they it's a risk of death, so they want.
All I can tell you is Cristiano Ronaldo had a heart condition, which was categorized as jeopardizing his soccer career. They did something to it. He's about 40 now. He's doing pretty good. So, still young, you know. Just don't give your heart to anyone. Yeah. At least if you want to give it to the right people. Actually, no. Don't give it to anyone. You should. Just not all of it. Ashley needs to go. So for those of you who want to go or need to go, you can. For those of you who want to stay, you can. It's good to see all of you.